Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to score 760 on the GMAT. My name is Rajat Sadana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me in this webinar is Sandeep. Sandeep is a GMAT strategy expert, and he'll make sure that each and every one of your questions are answered during this webinar. We also call this webinar the study plan webinar. Why? Because in this webinar, we start with helping you recognize what's important to ace the GMAT. Then we help you create your study plan. And then we tell you what's important to execute, or what should you keep in mind while executing that study plan. We do solve one sentence correction question in this webinar. So just to make sure that you're prepared for that particular question, now this lesson on verb BD modifiers is something that is really important. But we also want to expose you to some of the other free lessons that we have in the free trial if you're not a paid student, and so that you can watch them. So if you're interested in reading comprehension, we have two main point lessons there, and these are not just videos. These are videos with embedded exercises in them. And because we have these embedded exercises, you get feedback that's really personalized. Similarly, with boldface, you have a boldface concept file, boldface application file, and again, something that gives you feedback to really tell you where is it that you need to work on, and what is it that you know well, and so on and so forth. So we have upwards of 25 videos. So if you log into the GMAT account, you should get to the free trial. You should be able to access those videos. We also have some free upcoming webinars. We have a free quant workshop that's tomorrow, so in 24 hours from now. So for those of you who are not at that Q50 score yet, just think of this workshop as a proctored mock test in which we not only tell you where you currently are, but we also tell you what are the factors that hold you back today, and then how can you work on those factors. And then next week, so about a week from now, we have a free webinar on GMAT sentence correction. In this, we talk about the meaning-based approach that e-GMAT pioneered 10 years ago. And then we demonstrate how by focusing on meaning first and logic next and grammar last, you can solve the easiest to the most challenging questions that the test is likely to throw at you. With that, let's kind of get to know you guys a bit better. So let's kind of figure out when you plan to take the test, what is your target GMAT score, and then what's your current GMAT score. Excuse me. All right, let's get a few more data points. With regards to when do people plan to take the GMAT, about 60% of you haven't taken a date as of yet. The other, I mean, it seems like an increasing graph where very few of you have your test in 46 to 75 days. We have a bunch of you have your test in 15 days and 16 to 30 days, and so on and so forth. And then with regards to the target GMAT score, a good chunk of you are aiming for that 760 or higher. That's good to know, especially given what you guys would be getting into, the kind of competition that you'd be facing when you apply in 2020, fall of 2020 for the 2021 cycle. But essentially, 97% of you, give or take, are in that 710 to 760 bracket. And with regards to the current GMAT score, about 40% of you don't know your current score. You presumably haven't taken a mock test. On the next screen, Sandeep, we have great if we can give them a link to take a mock test, and that would help you. Actually, we have this link over here where if you select mock test, you can and click on browse to, you can get there to figure out what your current score is. All right, with that, let's go right into the webinar pane. The screen should have changed for you. All right, let's go into the poll over here and let's get a yes, no poll. How many of you can see the screen that says, how do you score 95th percentile on the GMAT? Select yes. If you can see that screen, select no otherwise. Okay, let me share the link to the mock test again. Over here. Here is the link. to the mock test again. Perfect. Let's move forward. Most of you can see the screen. If you cannot, just join again. Um, so let's talk about why is it that you should score 95th percentile or better on the GMAT, and the reason why I want to really talk about this is because even though many of you are aiming, about half of this class is aiming for that score of 730 or higher, what's going to happen as you start studying, you get to a point, you hit that 680, 690, your brain's going to tell you to give up. Why? Because after that, studying starts to become hard, or for people who don't study the right way, improvement starts to become hard. And at that point in time, I want to leave you with three reasons why you should continue on. And those three reasons are that if you're aiming for top B schools, you need that score of 730. They demand that score of 730. And this is, 2019 data that we're talking about. For the 2020 data, we still don't know what it would be, because the admission cycle starting R1 is supposed to be one of the most competitive admission cycles. The second reason is when you think about scholarships that B schools award, more than half of that scholarship money, and it's a considerable amount, you can see $350 million, that goes to people who get to that 730 or higher score. And the third reason uh, why you should aim for that is because, hey, if uh, there are options to get into tier 2B schools if you get to a lower score. I mean, they do. A 680 will still get you a decent MBA. But if you look at that delta in total earning over a 10-year period, which is if you graduate from a top B school versus if you graduate from a tier 2 school, it's about $500,000. It's the highest that it has ever been. And my personal hypothesis is that it is going to increase, that delta is going to increase even more given the economic situation that we are in. So let's look at some data against each of these points. Okay, but these 30 points could be between $500,000 to $1 million of net worth over the course of next 10 years. So let's look at the some data. So this is what this table shows us. What was the accepted median score at top B schools in 2014, and what was that score in 2018? Now, two things to observe here. One is it's kind of going towards the 730 mark. The second thing is there's no Harvard, there's no Stanford here. Why? Because even in 2014, they were at that 730 mark. And this is data that's been tracked by Poets and Quants, where they've seen that for 23 out of top 25 schools, that median score has gone up. When you look at MIT and Columbia, 80% of the admitted class over there has GMAT scores of 700 or higher. For the other three, we don't know because they don't share that data. MIT and Columbia do share that data. And essentially, this is despite the fact that there's a decline in GMAT test taking population during these 5 years, between 2014 and 2018. 2020 is the first time in this decade that we're seeing some sort of an increase in GMAT test taking population. So we expect this to be even more severe. And essentially, what this means is that, as Mark either said that the best of the best have a shot at getting into any of these top B schools. And this trend doesn't stop at top 25. It actually continues beyond top 25. And this is a stat that that looks at where is it that the 5-year increase has been the highest. And when you look at the 4 black dots, it's not tier 1 schools, it's tier 2 schools. Only the 2 rows where you don't see the black dots are tier 1 schools. So whatever tier 1 schools do, tier 2 schools follow, and it seems to be that they're following more with more than their fair share. Okay. Now this is statistical data, and you may ask, okay, I understand the stats, but do you have real cases where this has been applicable? And I'm going to show you some real cases of some of our former students. If you go to our YouTube channel, you could probably see tens of these cases out there. So Nishant scored a 690, was rejected by every school he applied to, improved to a 740, received multiple full fellowships, secured an admit from Columbia. And the nice thing about when you apply to a school such as Tuck is that it's a school that really cares for you, even when it rejects you. and it'll give you feedback. So I love that school for that reason. And Tuck told Nishant, hey, we love your candidacy. Your GMAT score is not just up to mark. Okay. Pravi, 680, applied to many schools. Did not receive a single interview invite. Just 7 hours before all the interview deadline, she updated her score. She didn't even apply again. She updated her score to a 740. Received 5 interview invites within hours. So this is 7 hours before the deadline, by the way. Again, you can see the scholarships, and she just graduated from Kellogg. Krishnakant, 680, couldn't get anywhere. 720, got 4 full fellowships. This is the interesting thing about KK is that that 680, he applied with that 680 in round two, and then he was rejected in round two over here. The 720, that application was in round three, and a lot of people say, hey, round three is really bad. There aren't that many seats. Think about it, multiple full scholarships. Okay. What's the difference between a scholarship and a fellowship? That's a great question. So a fellowship typically is 100% fellowship, which means it's full tuition scholarship is what I call as a fellowship. A scholarship could cover a partial tuition. So great question, Anuj. Bottom line is your GMAT score is a lot more important than today than it has ever been, or when it was when I took the GMAT. Now let's talk about the second reason over here, which is, hey, half of that scholarship money goes to students who score 730 or higher. Now, this is something that you won't see published anywhere, but the reason why we know this is because at e-GMAT, we serve about 10,000 paying students every year. Our students get upwards of $30 million worth of scholarship money every year. So we have a lot of this statistical raw data that comes to us. Okay, out of that 30 million, 350 million or so, which is what US B schools are what. If you add European B schools, probably add another 30-40 million to this. What we really see is that 55% of that money goes to people who score 740 or higher, and 80% of that goes to score 710 or higher. So really high scorers pretty much take all the money out of this. In many ways, what I really say is if you score low, you'd be actually subsidizing the education of people in your class who would be scoring high. And what this does with regards to the math is that if you do the math, what you're going to really say is if you apply properly, score 740 or higher, probably get $40,000 of average scholarship amount. And there are two factors that impact your scholarship amount. One is your GMAT score. The second is your interview. Okay. So there are two factors. Your essays and all, they don't impact your scholarship. It's these two factors based on my discussions or the discussions that we have as a part of a conference with B school admission officers. So, and in this part, your interview, your likability during that interview is a huge factor. So that's something which is, I think, if you're thinking about that scholarship money, and if that's important to you, think about it and improve on it, improve on your GMAT score. I personally, when I did my MBA, I had a full fellowship. I had multiple full fellowships actually, and I didn't pay a single penny for my MBA. Now, some more anecdotal data. Mansi scored 770, got $90,000 scholarship from Harvard. She got secured admits from Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, as well as INSEAD. Victor scored 770, got a full ride from Ross and Keenan Flagler. Kong Bui scored 760. He not only got a full ride from 5 different business schools, he actually got money to study at Ohio Fisher. So he was paid about $1,700 a month as stipend to study at Ohio Fisher. Again, we've already talked about some of these cases. I put the scholarship amounts over there. These YouTube links, when you get the session PDF, these are clickable. You can download them. You can, read their success story or watch their success story. So in this case, it's a debrief. You can read it here. It's all YouTube links essentially. Here's another example, and we're seeing more and more of these examples. So Ayush, who's a former student, scored 710. He applied to many B schools. He was interviewed by Ross and was waitlisted. And Ayush thought that his interview went really, really well. He connected with the school. He connected with the interviewer. So he reached out to Ross and said, hey, what happened? I think I had a really good shot at this. And the guy was really courageous to reach out. Most people won't even do that. So Ross told him, he said, we love your candidacy, but your GMAT's not great. Now, what he did was then he prepared for the GMAT again. He improved that score from 710 to 750. He did not even apply again. He just updated that GMAT score, and not only was his waitlisted converted to an admit, both Ross and Columbia even offered him a significant amount of scholarship money. So when you think about this, 710 waitlisted, no admit, 750, same application cycle, did not even have to apply again, scholarship, and and as well as an admit. Okay. And this is something that John Fuller, who's the former admissions director at Ross, said. He said someone with a 770 is much more likely to get financial reward. Why? Because the school wants to buy that high GMAT score. And let's talk about this third reason now, which probably is something that a lot of people ignore completely. So yes, you can't click on the links right now. I said when you get the PDF, you should be able to click on the links. So what I'm going to do now is compare how the earnings from two different schools. And I've looked at Babson, which is my alma mater, with MIT. And I'm comparing these two schools because these two schools are 20 miles apart. So if you graduate from Babson and if you graduate from MIT, considering that a good chunk of the students from either school get placed in the New England area, you should essentially have access to similar kind of opportunities, just purely by geography. But when you look at the starting salaries, what you see is the story is very different. So if you graduate from Babson, you have a starting salary of about 95K. If you graduate from MIT, you have a starting salary of about 135K. Now, what I have been told by some of our former students who've gone to Babson is that 95K has even gone down. 95K was actually during my time. The average starting bonus, if you graduate from MIT, is 3 times of what you graduate from Babson. So if you look at the starting salaries, even if you give 95K to a Babson student, the delta in first year compensation is about 60 grand. If you take that delta over a 10-year period and you say, because you're not going to get a bonus every year, so you say, let's assume the delta remains to be about 45K or so. Even then, you're looking at $450,000 over a course of 10 years. Now, here's the kicker over here. When I graduated from Babson, this number was still 96K or 95K in my case, but this number over here essentially was just 115K. So it wasn't 135, it was just 115K. So over the course of 10 to 12 years, I graduated 12 years ago, these companies have started valuing MBAs from top B schools a lot more. So again, want to do an MBA, if I were to do it today, I wouldn't go to Babson. I would probably go to a top school and pay some of the tuition fee. So again, 3 reasons why you should aim for that score of 730 or higher. It's just, those 30 points, easily $500,000 worth of net worth. Now, hopefully you guys are motivated enough to ace the GMAT. Then the first thing I want to leave you with is that when it comes to acing the GMAT, what is important? Let's just ask this question over here. Let's just ask this question. When it comes to acing the GMAT, what is important here? What's the most important thing when it comes to acing the GMAT? Okay, I'm going to remove broadcast results, but your answers are still coming in, so don't worry about that. I have 41 responses in there. $51. Okay, I'm going to now share results so that you guys can see this. And all right. So strategy, preparedness, don't fall for traps, quality study, consistency, logical reasoning, strong verbal. Okay, that's probably a more isolated case. approach to questions and time management. What you really see over here is, you know, a variety of responses, and all of them are important in the context of the GMAT. Uh, uh, but it's you can see just they seem to be all over the place. So one thing that I want you to leave away with today, and I'm going to prove this to you, is that when it comes to acing the GMAT, it is about building ability, and we're going to talk about what that ability is, and we're going to create a mathematical function around this ability. Okay, um, and the other some of these other things that you have over here: timing, exam strategy, figuring out what to do and what not to do while you are in the test. Stamina, they are important, but when it comes to their relative importance to this building ability, that's secondary. And that's a secondary in the sense that 80% of whether you ace the GMAT or not is dependent on your building ability. Okay. Now, I see some of those responses which also have this component of practice. And one of the things that I'm going to dispel during this webinar is that people who focus a lot on practice, and I'm going to tell you what a lot means. People who think they're going to spend more than 50% of the time doing practice usually do not ace the GMAT because because the GMAT's designed is a very different test than the CAT or than some of the other school exams that you've been taking. So just by brute force, very few people ace the GMAT. But people who build ability in a methodical fashion, a good chunk of them ace the GMAT. So that P word, the practice word, can actually backfire if you try and apply that strategy. And we're going to prove all of this during the course of this webinar. So let's talk about why is it that ability is important. And let me tell you, should talk about ability versus accuracy. Now, let's kind of get this yes no question here. How many of you know that GMAT's a computer adaptive test? How many of you are aware that GMAT's a computer adaptive test? Pretty much all of you should be. So preparing for the GMAT. Okay. So I'm going to, good, 99% of you are aware. So what I'm going to really do is I'm going to tell you how a computer adaptive test works, because even when people are aware of how what that GMAT's a computer adaptive test, very few people understand how it works, and or very few people are able to draw inferences from it. So so let me just talk about that. Just before we go there, I want to define what accuracy is. Accuracy is essentially, if you take a quiz of 10 questions, you get 8 of them right, your accuracy is 80%. You don't take into account the difficulty level of the questions served to you. You don't take into account what kind of questions you got right, and so on and so forth. You can have 80% accuracy. You might still have 50% ability. So accuracy is an absolute term. Okay, you don't compare yourself to others when you say I have so much accuracy. Ability is a comparative term. It tells you how good you are compared to other test takers. And so again, when you take a quiz, you might get 7 out of those 10 questions correctly, but when you compare yourself against 10,000 other test takers, that 7 out of those 10 might still put you in that 80th or 90th percentile ability, depending on how difficult those questions were. So accuracy and ability, they're very, very different terms. And when it comes to the GMAT, we care about ability is what I'm going to demonstrate. Okay. So here is a chart that shows a computer adaptive test for 2 different students. On the x-axis over here, you have question numbers. We're going to talk about question numbers 1 to 5. On the y-axis, you have difficulty level of questions. So the higher you go on y-axis, the more difficult a question becomes. So we're going to look at 2 students, student 1 and student 2. We're going to call it case 1 as student 1, case 2 student 2. So case 1 or student 1 gets the first question. The first question usually is around that medium difficulty level. So we're going to take an idealistic computer adaptive test. The GMAT uses a very similar algorithm, but it has an adaptation of this. But essentially, the principle that it follows is very similar. or almost identical to this. So you get the first question. The first question is usually around that medium difficulty level. Gets that correct, then it gets the second question, which is of a higher difficulty level. And you can really see as I go from first to second, the second blue dot is higher on the y-axis, which shows the increase in difficulty level. He gets that right as well. Gets a third question, which is of an even higher difficulty level. Why? Because we are going further up on the y-axis as you go from 2 to 3. He gets that wrong. Now, because of this, the test says, hey, his ability seems to be, the test approximates that ability and says maybe it's between the difficulty level of question number 2 and question number 3. So it gets the fourth question, which is slightly easier. And how do you figure this out? You very simply draw two horizontal lines, and forgive me, I'm going to just move this line a bit up over here, and you draw the second horizontal line from question number 2, and you can really see that question 4 is between question 3 and question 2. Okay, he gets that correct because it's a slightly easier question. Gets his next question, which is slightly more difficult, gets that wrong. As student 1, and we're going to just stop that test for student 1 over there, move our attention to student 2. Student 2 gets the first question, medium difficulty level, gets that wrong. Gets the second question, slightly easier, gets that right. Gets the third question, slightly more challenging, gets that wrong. Gets the fourth question, which is easier, gets that right, and gets the fifth question correct as well. So now at the end of essentially question 5, if we were to close the test, if we were to end this test, and if we were to score them, who do you think would be doing better? Would it be student 1 or would it be student 2? Who do you think would be doing better? And let's get some responses. Once I get 100 responses, I have about 270 people in the webinar. I'm going to broadcast the results. Okay, let me broadcast. I have about 120 responses. 85% of you say student 1 is doing better, and you guys are correct. Now that's very simple to really see that student 1 may be doing better. Let's understand the reason why student 1 is doing better. Why is it that student 1 is doing better if we were to end the test at question number 5? So if you were to close the test over here, what's the reason? What's the causality? Okay, let's get some. I like how some of you have started to use the word ability, which is really true. Um, um, I don't like the word aptitude. I'll be very frank. We at e-GMAT are very firm believers that people have the same amount of gray matter. The difference between individuals is essentially their willingness to apply themselves. Because we firmly believe if you're willing to apply yourself, we will be there to support you. So the aptitude word for me is actually a really bad word. Because it really says that there is a certain bias that someone has, and that's very difficult to overcome that bias. Okay. So also some of you have said difficult questions carry greater weight or higher weight. That's perfect. Those are really good reasons. If you're really doing that, you're kind of thinking already in terms of ability. And let me just put this over here. Okay. This is the average difficulty line. When you think about student 1, he got 5 questions. Each of these 5 questions were either at the average difficulty level or above the average difficulty level. When you look at student 2, there was only one question that was at the average difficulty level. Every other question was below the average difficulty level. Even though both of them had 60% accuracy, it's the difficulty level of questions that they answered correctly that mattered to their success on the GMAT. And that's something which I want you to take away. The difficulty level of questions that you answer correctly would determine what you actually get. Now, can anyone tell me what's the ratio of score if you were to compare the score that you get for an easy question versus the score that you get for a difficult question? How much more valuable is a difficult question compared to an easy question? Can you guys tell me? Okay, I see 1.5 is to 1, 3 is to 1, 5 times, no idea, 2 is to 1, 4 times. Yeah, it's not specified by the GMAT. Yes, you're right. GMAT that won't tell you. 5 marks for easy, 9 for difficult. So that's 1 is to 1.8 is what you're saying. So the correct answer, and this is something we mean as an we are a 50% company. Each one of us works full time on the GMAT. And you compare us to any other test prep company, you're going to find there's no other test prep company in the world where you have 50 full time employees working just on the GMAT. My guess is even though the closest company that would come to us probably is Kaplan, but even over there, it's something which we don't know. And based on our research, uh, what it is the answer is between 2.5 to 3 times. So difficult question has 2.5x as many points, or between 2.5 and 3 as many points as an easy question. And how do we figure that out? We look at ESRs and we compare the difficulty levels that we see in the ESRs. And again, that's where you have to do a lot of uh, image processing on the ESRs, and you get to it. So just 2.5 times overall, and which is where when you look at a Scholaranium platform, you can actually see the weights for easy, medium, and hard. And if you take those ratios, you're going to be able to get to that. But the takeaway that I want you to have is your GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer those difficult questions correctly. Now, if you want to ace the GMAT, there are two challenges that you have. The first is you've got to get these difficult questions served to you. Okay, why? Because on the GMAT, because of the nature of it being a computer adaptive test, uh, 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 there's this question picking algorithm that's going to serve the questions to you that it thinks you can answer correctly. So if you don't answer the medium questions correctly, you won't even get hard questions served to you. So the challenge one is to get difficult questions served to you. Challenge two is to again answer them correctly. Okay, those are the two challenges over here. Now this was just a simulation. I'm going to now share some real data with you, and this real data is on GMAT prep questions, and this is GMAT prep from pre 2018 when the verbal section was contained 41 questions. Okay, so what you see over here is two tests or test results from two different students. The thing which is there is if you compare them between question number 11 to 41, you're going to find there's very little to take away between these two students. They have 9 mistakes between question numbers 11 and 41, and the mistakes are more or less evenly spaced out. The only difference which is there and is that student 2 over here has made these two mistakes in the first two questions, whereas student 1 has gotten the first incorrect. Now, when you look at their end scores, they're very different. Student 2 has a verbal score of 32. Student 1 has a verbal score of 43. Now, what they lead to in percentiles is even more different. A V43 is 97th percentile on the GMAT. A V432 is 65th percentile. How many of you, when you look at something like this and you say, man, the GMAT's a really harsh test, how many of you look at this and really say, this is really scary? Type your answers out if you think this is scary. And again, some of you are talking about the first few questions. We'll talk about that first few questions. So just hold that answer. Is it scary? Is it not scary? Let's talk about it. You know what? I'm going to get in a yes no poll. Let's just do that. I think let's kind of see where the class stands. It has a yes no poll. Select yes if you think this is scary and select no if you think this is not. And then we're going to really talk about what I think is the case. Hold on. I'm going to remove broadcast results. Sorry about that, to add to that bias. Let's get a few more people. Let's get 150 responses. I have 270 students here. How many of you think this is scary? How many of you think this is not scary? All right, 3, 2, and 1. We have almost have 170, or actually we have upwards of 170 responses. 71% of you think it's scary. It's actually not scary at all. I will tell you that. Why? And which is where, when you look at stuff in context, you reach a very different conclusion. I mean, just I'd say just look at the guy who scored 97 percentile over here. Let's just focus our attention on this guy. This guy made 9 mistakes out of 41, 9 mistakes out of 41, he could still get 97 percentile. Tell me a test where that can happen. And some of you are coming to really good answers right now. One of you says you can make mistakes and still score high. The other one saying the kind of questions that you're getting is they're very different. Okay, that's very true. Okay, so the thing that I want you to really say is these two people are students who have very different abilities, and how do we figure it out? I'm going to mathematically do that. But even before that, let's simulate their attempts on this model of GMAT that we just created, or that model of a computer adaptive test that we just created. And let's just clean this up a bit. Let's clean this up. We're going to start with student 2 first, the guy who made mistakes in the first two questions. The first question, median difficulty level, he got that wrong. The second question, 30th percentile level, he got that wrong. Those of you who consider yourself to be quant whizzes, can you tell me what is the probability that a 90th percentile student would get a 50th percentile question wrong and a 30th percentile question wrong? What is the probability that a 90th percentile student would get a 50th percentile question wrong and a 30th percentile question wrong, one after the other? It's less than 1 in 10,000. Less than 1 in 10,000. Okay. It's almost zero. So at this point over here, where at this point where the test has to make a decision which question to serve, it's not very illogical to think that this guy is not a smart guy. So the third question that he got over here was the 15th percentile level. He got that right. The fourth question was the 22nd percentile level, 35th percentile level, 40th percentile level, 55th percentile level, and so the difficulty level did go up slowly for student 1 who got the first 10 questions right. By the time he reached question number 4, he was already getting super hard questions, and he continued to get them right. So again, he got more weights. Okay, so that's how the GMAT looks at you. Now, some of you say that what about anxiety in the early questions? No, I mean, if you're a 90th percentile guy, when you see a 50th percentile question, there should be no anxiety. If you get a 90th percentile question, I can understand that, but not if you get a 50th percentile question. It should be a slam dunk to you. Now, some of you were saying, does this mean that the first 10 questions are important? And my answer to that is yes and no. And let me explain my ambivalent answer to this question. If I just say yes to this, then what's going to happen is you guys are going to spend a ton of time on the first 10 questions. And because a lot of people think by spending time on a question, I can build ability. Even if I don't have the ability to answer a certain question correctly, if I spend more time on it, I can increase that probability. That doesn't happen. Either you know how to answer a question or you don't know how to answer a question. For example, in a sentence correction question, if you can't answer that question in a minute 45, which kind of is my upper end, most likely you won't even be able to answer that question correctly in about 3 minutes, even if I gave you those 3 minutes. Why? Because if you don't have that ability, if you have that ability, you'll be able to answer it in a minute 45 or less. If you don't have it, take 3 minutes, nothing's going to happen. And we're going to prove that in this webinar. Same thing with critical reasoning, same thing with number properties, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, these guys, when you'll remember them, do you remember these guys over here? We said 2 mistakes, and this is what it led to. That's not how the GMAT looks at them. It doesn't care about your mistakes. It cares about these ability scores. So how the GMAT views you as an individual is these ability scores. And what the GMAT found as it measured those ability scores internally is that student 1 had 95th percentile ability in SC, 95th in CR, and 87th in RC. Student 2 had these abilities, and based on these measures of individual ability, the test gave a verbal score to this particular student. Now, when you look at these students through the lens of ability, do they look different or very different? When you look at these students through the lens of the ability, right? They're very, very different. I mean, there's this guy who's at 95th percentile in SC, 95th percentile in CR, and he's at 81st percentile in SC and 66th percentile in CR, 87th in RC, and 59th percentile. So overall, the 65th percentile seems to be justified, and this 97th percentile seems to be very justified as well. Why? Because such a combination, the probability of a guy being at 95th percentile in SC, 95th percentile in CR, and 87th percentile in RC is very low. So this joint probability leads to that 97th percentile score. Similarly, these joint scores lead to that 65 percentile score estimate. Okay. So what the GMAT measures is not verbal or quant in entirety. It measures these abilities, and so the question is, what does the GMAT measure? Because all of you, when you think about it, you look at this score, and frankly, this score is an outcome. It's not the cause. If you focus on the cause, this score would be much easier. It would be a lot more easy to achieve this score. When you think about that scores out of 800, you have a quant score, you have a verbal score. Each of these scores is out of 60 or out of 100. So you get a score out of 60, you also get a percentile score in quant as well as verbal. Now, when you look at quant, you have an arithmetic score and you have an algebra geometry score. When you look at verbal, you have scores in SC, CR, and RC. Okay. I know the screen is blank for a few of you. So essentially, when you look at the GMAT, you're looking at 5 different abilities. Okay, 3 in verbal and 2 in quant. Okay. On the official test, how many of you have seen an ESR? How many of you have seen an ESR or an enhanced score report? Yes, you have. Do you see these 5 ability scores in your ESR? ESR is an enhanced score report. It's something that you get when you take the real GMAT and you ask for you pay $30 to get what we call as a diagnostic report. Okay, so in the ESR, when you get it, you spend $30 to get this ESR. After you pay to $50 to take the GMAT, you actually get these 5 scores, so that you can really see how did you do in SCCR and RC and arithmetic and algebra and geometry. When you combine the performance of these 5 abilities, you can get to your verbal score, you can get to your quant score with 99.5% accuracy. 99.5% accuracy. So when you think about getting to a certain GMAT score of 730 or 750, the question you should be asking is, what are the abilities that you're aiming for? Why? Because it's these abilities that help you get to this. So first takeaway today is acing the GMAT is about building ability. And these other things that you guys worry about, they're secondary. 80% of acing the GMAT is about building ability. Now, the other takeaway that I want you to have is on the GMAT, if you have ability, you can make mistakes. We'll get to how to build ability in about 20 minutes. So just hold tight or sit tight over there. So on the GMAT, you can make mistakes. Here is an example of a student who improved from a 520 to a 710. And so a verbal score of 17, which is like 15 percentile on verbal, to a verbal score of 40, which is 91st percentile. And you can see the 3 ability scores. Now, the reason I'm sharing this debrief is because you can actually see what an ESR is. You can download an ESR. And Sandeep, if you can get the link and share it in the Q&A pod, that would be great. So if you ask a question, can you share the ESR? Sandeep should be able to give you the link. Okay. Now, this guy made quite a few mistakes. So here is uh, here is the link to his ESR. Let me just get this over here. Yeah, we'll share that link to ESR. Just give us about a few minutes. I have the presentation open on my other computer. Uh, while you take a look at this, all right, Sandeep's already shared. That's great. So what you see over here is that this guy made a lot of mistakes uh, over here. He got the first 10 questions pretty much correct. He made just one mistake. He made about 2 mistakes in the second group of questions. In the third and fourth group, he pretty much did half the questions wrong. He was still able to get a 91st percentile on GMAT, on the verbal section of the GMAT. Why do you think he was able to get that? Because by the time he got over here, he'd proven to the test that he can answer the medium questions correctly. And in the third and the fourth block, he only got hard questions. And because the questions were hard, of course, his accuracy was going to go down. But because he made mistakes on difficult questions, the test didn't penalize him nearly enough. 91st percentile on verbal is really great. Again, just to really tell you, buildability, don't worry as much about hey, answering questions in a ton of time. Why? Because had he marked half the questions randomly over here, he would have still gotten a very decent score. He got made uh, um, mistakes in half the questions over here. Why? Because he was able to prove to the test that he has that ability. Okay, acing the GMAT is about building ability. That's something that you need to really look at this. So now let's talk about how do you get that study plan to build ability, and uh, what should a study plan do? So tell me what is the job of a study plan? What's the job of a study plan? Can you put your answers? Okay, let's get. I have 8 answers. The question is, what is the job of a study plan? Let's get a few more responses. I have 43 responses. Let me broadcast results. So I'll let you some time to read through these responses. Um, some of it, and you'll see that there's a variation of responses. Some of them actually focus on the plan aspect of it, where you're talking about what do you do every day. Some of you've actually gone at a much more strategic level, where you've talked about the sequence in which you're going to study. Some of you've talked to that even a higher level, we're talking about the motivation and other aspects of it. So, and some of you have really just answered the question in a very smart manner. It says it takes you from your current score to your desired score. Yes. Okay. So, and Atinder says, can you share some examples of already made use study plans? Yes, I'm going to share this. I'm going to actually share a case study of 2 people, and I'm going to share that study plan. But just to really tell you, if you're an e-GMAT student, we help you create your own personalized study plan. Since January of 2019, e-GMATers have created about 20,000 unique study plans. Not 3, not 4, but 20,000 unique study plans. So a study plan does 3 things. The first thing that it does is it will tell you how will you reach your target GMAT score, and the answer to this how is a multifaceted answer. Okay, so the first thing is, when you think about a study plan, you've got to get your starting abilities in SC, CR, RC, arithmetic, and algebra, because without it, you don't have a good starting point. Once you have your starting abilities, the study plan then tells you what target abilities should you aim for to get to your GMAT score. The worst thing you can do when it comes to studying for the GMAT is to really say, I'm going to start studying sentence correction. I'm going to spend 80% of my time practicing questions. I'm going to practice 300 questions. Then I'm going to start studying critical reasoning, do the same thing. Start studying reading comprehension, do the same thing. Then I'm going to go to number properties and so on and so forth. That's one of the worst things. What's wrong with this study plan? A, it doesn't take into account uh, what your starting abilities are, or in a particular subsection, what your starting ability is. The second thing, it overly focuses on practice. Now, in certain scenarios, that is right, but in many scenarios, it isn't. The third thing, you can practice 300 questions. How do you know whether you've hit that ability? Okay. So a good study plan answers these questions with a lot more precision. It tells you how will I reach my target score, which means what are my starting abilities, what are my ending abilities, and so what does it mean to get to my ending ability? It answers that question. The second question that it answers is how much time do I need to put in that particular subsection to reach my target GMAT score? I have about 250 students here right now in the webinar. If I were to measure your starting abilities, I can tell you that if each one of you wanted to reach 90th percentile in sentence correction, you'd probably have about 8 to 9 different time requirements to hit that 90th percentile. Knowing which study plan works for you in sentence correction would determine the chance whether you have a chance of success to hit that 90th percentile. Okay, knowing that precise timing is really important once you know what your target ability in sentence correction is going to be. But even more important is how should you put that time? Where should you put that time in? A lot of people think practice is going to make you perfect. No, on the GMAT, blind practice does not make you perfect. Depending on what your starting ability is, you need to spend that time in different aspects of learning. So these are 3 questions that a study plan answers. And to really uh, 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 tell you the depth to which you need to look at when it comes to these 3 questions, I'm going to take 2 case studies. Okay, I'm going to take a case study of 2 students. Both of them are going to start at a score of 600, and both of them want to get to a score of 740. So identical starting scores, identical uh, target score of 740. Now there's going to be some data over here. So I would recommend, if you don't have a pen and paper with you, just get a pen and paper so that, or open a notepad so that you can scribble some numbers so that they remain in your mind. Why? Because over the next 5 slides, we're going to retain this data. Okay. Let me actually get in a poll question before I show the data. I want to get a poll question so that we also have a bit more fun, because it starts to get very taxing. Cool, here is my poll question. I have it over here. So the 2 students that we're going to talk about, the names are Chase and Abby. Here's Abby, here's Chase over here. So Abby has a starting quant score of 42, a starting verbal score of 31 out of 60. Chase has a starting quant score of 49, a starting verbal score of 23. Now, when you translate that quant score into abilities, and there's no single translation, but for simplicity, I've done an approximate translation for you. A quant score of 42 for Abby is 42 percentile in arithmetic and 42 percentile in algebra geometry. Now, it could have also been that Abby could have been a 30th percentile in arithmetic and about a 50th or 55th percentile in algebra geometry, but I wanted to reduce the variety in numbers. So I kept 42 over here. On the verbal side, so on Chase similarly has 72 on the quant side over here. On the verbal side, Abby's around that 60th percentile in each of the subsections, and Chase is around that 35th percentile in each of the subsections. It just helps you remember numbers. Each one of you your ability could vary vastly over here for that score of 23. Now, before we go forward, who do you associate more with? Is it Abby? Is it Chase? Let's see how many people here associate with Abby. And Abby is someone who's stronger in verbal than in quant, and Chase is someone who's stronger in quant than in verbal. Who do you think you associate more with? Is it Abby? Is it Chase? And you could not associate with either one of them. That's okay too. So let's get about 100 responses. Who do you associate more with? Is the question. All right, I have 100 responses. More people, more folks like Chase than like Abby. That's good. So, do you think Abby and Chase need the same quantum verbal scores to get to 740? No, they don't need to put the same amount. Similarly, they do not need to put the same amount of time. The amount of time that they need to put in quantum verbal is going to be vastly different. Similarly, what they study is going to be very, very different as well. Okay. So the question really is, how do you figure out what should be your target quant and target verbal scores? The only company in the world that will help you do that is e-GMAT. Why? Because we built this AI-driven utility called GMAT Planner. If you go to gmatplanner.com, you can go build your study plan. We have some open slots where we help you build your study plan. If you go there, you can really schedule a slot over there. Now, what is this GMAT Planner? It's an AI-driven utility that helps each one of you to create your personalized study plan. If you're an e-GMAT student, you have access to it. You can build, you can refine your study plan as many times. If you're a registered user and you can't find a slot, because usually these slots go within 5 minutes, you can write to me, and then we can see when can we open a slot. But if there are some slots open, you can go there and check those. Now, Abby and Chase, both of them will use GMAT Planner, and what you see on this screen now is a screenshot for Abby from the planner. Remember, these were her starting scores. She had a quant score of 42 and a verbal score of 31, and you can see the percentiles over here. And then what the GMAT Planner really says is that to get to that score of 740, you need to spend Q48 and V42. Okay, which means which needs to get to Q48 and V42, and you can really see the percentiles over here and in quant and verbal. So it tells you that. Then it defines the amount of time you need to reach there. Now, one of the things which is there is it takes into account the stages of learning to help you get there, and it assumes that you're going to be diligent while studying. So for Abby, you're going to really, let me just expand this, and this is again a screenshot for GMAT Planner itself. Okay, what this means is that for Abby, she needs to spend 2.1 weeks to go from 59th percentile in SC to 94th percentile in SC. And similarly in RC, she's going to need about 2 weeks to go from 60th percentile to 90th percentile. Now this time, 2 weeks, is designed based on the inputs that Abby gave, which are not just her starting abilities, but also the amount of time she can study on a weekday as well as the amount of time she can study on a weekend. Now, one of the other things which is you see is she's first going to ace her verbal part, then she's going to do her quant. And even though you might think, okay, she's weaker in quant, but because she's not aiming for such a high score, comparatively, she doesn't need to spend as much time in quant as she needs to spend on verbal. Which initially, had you looked at her without a precise plan, you might have said, okay, this doesn't seem right. Why? Because she's stronger in quant. She probably needs to spend, she's stronger in verbal, so she probably needs to spend more time in quant. The key thing over here is to really say, hey, Abby is not aiming for that Q50, she's aiming for that Q48, and hence the amount of time required changes. Okay, now let's talk about Chase. Chase starts at a Q49. The planner says he needs to get to a Q50, and which is not a super high jump. Similarly, on verbal, the planner says he needs to get to a V40. There's no other way. When you get to a Q50, there isn't a whole lot of headroom to improve on quant, so you have to get that improvement from verbal. Now, These are the target scores, and you can really see how the target scores are different. Now, how much time does Chase need? He needs about a week to ace arithmetic and algebra, and then he needs about 3 weeks each for SC, CR, and RC. Okay. So now let's kind of think about this time over here, and let's put this in context. Uh, in this. So Chase and Abby, they had the exact same starting score, but you can see that the target scores are very different in both quant and verbal. But the biggest difference is not the target scores, but the biggest difference is the amount of time required. So if you think about Chase, okay, and you really see that Chase needs to get to a V40 about 9 weeks, and Abby to get to a V42 needs about 6 weeks. So Chase needs about 50% more time to get to a V40. All right. Similarly, Abby needs twice as much time on quant when it comes to reaching her target score. Now imagine yourself if you really needed 9 weeks to get to a certain score in verbal, but you only budgeted 6 weeks for it, what would happen? If you needed 9 weeks but you budgeted just 6 weeks, what kind of impact do you think it would have on how you go about studying? Can you put those answers in the short answer pod? You will feel rushed. You will skip through things, right? And that's kind of where that timing piece is really important. Now, even when this timing, depending on how seriously you put it, is maybe off by a week or so, but the important thing is you get a really good estimate early on, and because you get that estimate right in the beginning of your preparation, you get into the right mindset. Okay. The person who says won't have time to apply, that's a really good possibility. But a more likely possibility is that you won't learn application, you would rather go into practice tests, because as human nature, we don't do this. Mayank says, what if you are short on time? What if you don't have that time? Then Mayank, don't aim for that high GMAT score. That's all that I will tell you. I mean, improvement needs time. You can't really say starting at a 600, I want to go to a 740, but I don't have 10 weeks of time to spend on it. So, or I'm not going to spend 150 hours on this for those 140 points of improvement. Um, so if you don't have those 10 weeks, then take a few vacation days. Make that study more and more concentrated. It's the number of hours that you require that doesn't change. You can shorten that time by putting in more hours. Now remember this. Go to the beginning of this webinar where I said, those 30 points could be $500,000 of net worth. So the question, the ball's in your court as to do you think it's worth achieving that improvement? Okay. So if you're short on time, reschedule the test, especially in the current times when rescheduling the test is free of charge. You guys are living in some really good times right now with regards to the GMAT, where you can take the GMAT at your home, you can take the GMAT in the test center now. There's no rescheduling fee and so on and so forth. Okay, so but that's not the biggest difference. That timing piece is not the biggest difference. The biggest difference is where do they spend this time? That's really important. Okay, so let's talk about what we call as stages of learning. And this is a chart with regards to how does ability vary with stages of learning. Okay, so the first stage of learning is learn concepts. When you learn a particular subsection, such as sentence correction, if you know all the concepts, even if you don't know a whole lot of application, excuse me, if you know all the concepts without knowing all the application, you can still solve the easy questions, and which is where you get to that 25th to 30th percentile ability. Once you learn how to apply those concepts, you get to that 50th percentile ability. Remember, ability is a comparative term. Remember, it's not about accuracy, it's about ability. Then as you master that application, you get to that 70th percentile ability. After you mastered that application, when you get to refining to perfection, you hit that 90th percentile ability. And from there on, you only have to maintain performance to achieve higher ability. Okay. So, um, when you think about Abby, remember what's Abby's, and this is a quiz for you. Abby's starting percentile in SC is around that 60th percentile. Where do you think Abby needs to spend her time when it comes to studying SC? Because remember, she had 2 weeks to study SC. Where do you think Abby will spend her time? In which stage of learning do you think Abby will spend her time in? Which in sentence correction, in which stage of learning do you think Abby will spend her time in? The answer is learn concepts and application, master application, refine to perfection, or maintain. Okay, as many of you are saying correctly, she already knows the concept. She knows application to a good degree. She's going to spend a good chunk of time mastering application and refining to perfection. Okay, she is at that 60th percentile already. Okay, but when it comes to the quant side of things, she's not going to spend time on refining to perfection or maintaining that. She's just going to spend on learning concepts and mastering application. That's about it. So on the verbal side, would Abby be studying concepts? Yes or no? On the verbal side, no, she won't be. She won't be. If she were a member of the e-GMAT course, she would look at the more challenging application files and then she would go to the Scholarinium platform on verbal. Okay. Those 2 weeks, if Abby were to study from a book, she'd go out and reading the book, which a lot of that time would be wasted because books pretty much teach you concepts. Okay. Now, when it comes to quant, how would that strategy change for quant for Abby? How would that strategy change for quant? What will Abby do in quant? If you're an e-GMAT student, you don't do books, you go through concept files because concept files give you feedback that's personalized to you. But yes, you got the answer right. Abby needs to learn concepts and application. She can't go practicing blindly. She doesn't have all the concepts and application. Blind practice for Abby is gonna be harakari. It's gonna be time wasted. Okay, and that's really important. Remember this. A study plan should not just tell you what you should do, it should also tell you what you should not do. And in this, when you see a chart like this, you can really see both what you should do and what you should not do. Now, how many of you, when you built your study plan, got this level of clarity? How many of you, when you built that study plan, got this level of clarity? If you're not an e-GMAT student, that is, you're an e-GMAT student, the guy who asks concept and application files, you probably are an e-GMAT student. Okay, but if you are an e-GMAT student, you got this level of clarity, you are on that right path. Okay, now Chase is going to be very different. Let's talk about Chase. Where would Chase spend his time? On the verbal side, remember, he's starting at a very low verbal score. So he's going to spend time on learning concepts and mastering application. And now you can really appreciate why is it that Chase needs 9 weeks or 3 weeks per subsection in verbal. You can see that, right? Because if he has to go from that 34th percentile to that 90th percentile, you can see that. And why is it that Abby only needs 6 weeks on the verbal side of things? On the quant side, is already at that 70th percentile. That's where Chase on quant can just do practice. He doesn't need to learn concepts. He doesn't need to learn application. He can get by in quant with brute practice. So this over here is I would call it practice, practice, and practice over here. Okay, this is where you can practice, but not in the first two stages. Okay, but if Chase goes to practice and on the verbal side of things, he is not going to improve beyond 50th percentile. So the thing which is there is, even though both Abe and Abby and Chase, I should say, Abby and Chase are aiming for that score of 740, how they get to that score, where they spend that time, and what component of learning they're going to use to achieve that score, it's very, very different. And that's something that you need to get out of your study plan. Now, in each of these, Mayank's talking about how many hours do you assume? We assume people would spend in about 20 hours per week, which means about 8 hours on the weekend and about 12 hours during the 5 days of the week. Okay. So again, write to me if you need help personalizing your journey, or better still, schedule something on GMAT Planner. Now, there's this great question out there, which is how do you check progress in the middle of learning? Charan says, Charan, your concept and application files tell you your progress. Okay, so that's how you do it. Please don't go about taking mocks. That's one of the worst ways of taking a mock test. Let me just address this. What happens when you take a mock test? Let's say you've been studying SC and you take a mock test. What's going to happen? What happens when you take a mock test? You've been studying SC, you take a mock test, you do slightly better in SC. And by the way, you don't do as well in CR, you don't do as well in RC. Why? Because you've been spending all that time in SC. So what happens? You say, okay, maybe it's time for me to stop doing SC and then I'm going to move on and study CR. Does that happen? When you take a mock test, you change your direction? Does that happen? Take a mock test? No, it doesn't happen. No, I'm not saying whether what's better or not. What I'm saying is, has any one of you who has taken a mock test, have you done this? And if you have taken a mock test, you would see that does happen. Having dealt with 50,000 students, I've seen this take place a lot of times. What you do is you study SC. Let me just explain. You study SC. Okay, and you say, hey, I've been studying SC for 10 days. Now, let me just do this. I've been studying SC for these 10 days. Now I'm going to take a mock over here. And then I go about and over here, because I probably didn't do as well in CR, let me go start studying CR now. And the problem with this approach is that you didn't hit that 90th percentile in SC. And you change direction, which means a lot of what you learned in SC over here, a lot of what you learned during this time in SC till this point, you go there. That goes waste. Why? Because you didn't cement that. And some of you have seen that, Suraj says that's been my approach. That's a really bad approach. That's what I call as a zigzag approach when you should be going in a straight line. Okay. So let's kind of get to how to build ability. And I see a lot of you have those tactical questions. Okay. So we're going to talk about some of those tactical questions, but as you probably can really see, those tactical questions don't play as big a role in your success as the strategic part. Should you take my first mock with any prep? How many of you have taken a mock test here? Let's just get in a yes no poll over here. Okay. Uh, okay, let's just get a yes no poll because I think that's a much better. How many of you have taken a mock test? Okay, and for those of you saying yes, yes, I recommend that you establish a baseline. Yes. For those of you who are saying that yes, how many of you actually, if you've know your ability scores in the 5 subsections that we talk about? How many of you know your ability scores? So 60% of you don't know it. Why? Because when you take a mock test, which is not an e-GMAT mock test, you do not get ability scores. Most of the mock tests that you see today, A, either are not adaptive, okay, or B, they're not built with ability engines in mind, which is how the GMAT's designed. And so they are what we call as not subsection adaptive, but they are verbal adaptive, which means how you do on an SC question will impact the difficulty level of what you get on the CR side of things. The real GMAT doesn't work that way. So should you take a mock test? Yes, but just don't take any mock test. Take a mock test that will help you create your study plan, that will give you those precise diagnostics. And again, it's not about being in a better position to take a mock test. It's about getting that initial estimate. One of the other things that I want to tell you, when you say I'm afraid of taking a mock test, and essentially when people make excuses, it's that fear. When you're taking the GMAT, you have to throw fear away, because if you are fearful of the test, it will scare the hell out of you. But if you trust your ability, if you really say, okay, I know that I have it in me, then then you're going to find that life with the GMAT, or life with preparing for the GMAT, becomes a lot easier. So after you establish a baseline, should you take it one again? No, you should not. I'll tell you when you should take it, but not right away. Okay, so what have we learned so far? Really important. You need to get to that high score. The second thing that we have learned is, comes to acing the GMAT, you need ability. The third thing that we have talked about is what's the value of that personalized study plan. And the fourth thing that we have talked about is the 4 stages of learning. And then you have that 1 stage of retention where you maintain your performance. And just to summarize this, these are the stages of learning over here, and these are the ability scores in each subsection that you get to it. The takeaway with these ability scores is, depending on which stage you are in, you would focus on different activities. For example, if you're at 25th percentile, just practicing is not going to help. The other thing which is there is the level of intensity varies at different stages. Okay. Your preparation typically is going to be most intense during these 2 stages. When you're learning application and mastering application, you require focus. Okay. Should you take a mock test before learning any concept at the beginning? Yes, you should. I think I've already answered that question, guys. You should take a mock test. All right. Now, many of many people who do this, they get stuck at 60th percentile in whatever subsection that they really do this, whether it's SC, CR, RC, number properties, algebra, and so on and so forth. And there's a reason. So even when you have that personalized study plan, success doesn't happen. Okay. So there's a reason why that is the case, and that reason is what we call as the attitude of learning. And uh, and that's something that I'm going to talk about as to why is it that people don't improve beyond that 60th percentile in sentence correction. Now, just to really tell you, how many people get stuck at 60th percentile? About 80,000. How many people get to that 90th percentile? About 20,000. The number of hours they spend learning in a subsection, which is, let's say, SC or CR, it's very similar. Their starting ability, again, very similar. Their capability, which is what someone called aptitude, is also very similar. The difference is the attitude towards learning. The difference is the amount of time they spend on learning the content versus what I call as brute practice. Sorry about that. It seemed to be catching some sort of a cold over here. Okay. Now, the thing that you have to understand is that when you get to that 90th percentile, it's about achieving perfection. And I'm going to demonstrate what does it mean by achieving perfection right now. Okay. Um, so here is what a 90th percentile looks at SC. Okay. He says, okay, GMAT SC, when you look at a 60th percentile student versus a 90th percentile student, a 60th percentile student says that GMAT SC is about learning 8 major error types, or in this case, you see 7 major error types over here, and then you can read the error types. The 90th percentile guy says something very different. A 60th percentile guy uses splits and only brings in meaning when needed. While learning, a 60th percentile guy gets about 7 to 10 feedback points. And that those 40 hours that a 60th percentile guy he spends 30% of his time learning, 70% of his time practicing. Anyone who spent 40 hours learning GMAT SC over here, recognize this? The time spent between learning and practice, the number of errors that you see. I mean, there are a few people who probably are in that group who've really said, hey, GMAT SC is about learning verbs, subject verbs, and so on and so forth, and then have spent 30% of their time learning and 70% of their time practicing. Anyone over here? Yay, nay, guys? Yeah, a few of you are in that bracket, right? Uh, that has happened. That's not how a 90th percentile guy thinks. A 90th percentile guy really says, hey, GMAT SC is about not learning those 8 concepts, but 200 sub-concepts in these buckets. Okay, the buckets remain the same as you can see over here. Okay, the other thing that you see is meaning is not a bucket for that 90th percentile guy. Meaning is an underlying piece in all of these. A 90th percentile guy approaches things very differently. The number of feedback points a 90th percentile guy seeks is also very different. You can already see it's 10 times as many personalized feedback points. And a 90th percentile guy spends about 60 to 70% of his time learning and purely 40% of this time practicing. Now, even when the person spends that 40% of the time practicing, a 90th percentile guy spends more time per unit question revising his mistakes, about 3 times as much time per unit question revising his mistakes than a 60th percentile guy gets. Okay. What's the feedback point? Okay, we're going to talk about this, Amir, in about 10 minutes or so. So just to really tell you how many personalized feedback points we give you over here, when you're learning concepts, you see the stages of learning over here. When you're learning concepts, they give you 75 personalized feedback points. And each of these feedback points is built on 5 items or so. Okay. When you're learning application, we give 23 personalized feedback points. Okay. When you're mastering application, refining to perfection, you get 30 to 50 personalized feedback points over here. And then in that last stage, you still get about 5. Now remember, most of you already hit that 80th to 85th percentile to 90th percentile by the time you hit there. So 5 feedback points at that stage is very valuable. The question that you have to ask yourself is, when it comes to GMAT SC, it's about learning these 200 concepts. How can you achieve that perfection if you only get feedback 7 to 10 times? How do you know that you're learning concepts in the right manner? And then when do you learn how to apply these concepts? While you're learning these concepts or after that? And just to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to see this in action. And I'm going to give you a sentence correction question to solve to really say what is it that what does it take when it comes to those 200 concept types in or 200 different concepts in SC. So I'm going to give you a poll question over here. And I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to solve this question. And let's just get to my SC question over here. Hold on. So solve this SC question. That is here. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to. All right, guys, last 30 seconds. Get those answers in. Five, four, three, two, and one. Let's end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results over here. Now, I'm going to put in a short answer poll again. And what I want you to tell me is how you approached this question. Okay, how did you go about? I mean, a good chunk of you said choice C is the answer. Why did you feel, those of you, 50% of the class said choice C is the answer. Let me just share the poll results with you. For those of you who chose choice C as the answer, why did you think choice C is the correct answer? Why do you think choice C is the correct answer? Okay, I've said meaning, so you'd assume that meaning would be there. Choice C makes more sense, clearly states the relationship. Meaning, forget about, again, those of you who have not chosen choice C, please can I request you to not talk about other choices? 50% of the class has chosen choice C. Let's get data. Why do they think? Okay. Read that answer. I read through all of them, cancelling out all the surely wrong ones and choosing the one that sounded the best. For those of you who've chosen choice C, and again, for those of you who've chosen choice C, does that seem like this thing sentence correction is sentence construction is the best, uh, or yeah, or that sounded the best? Is that does it seem like the approach that pretty much folks who've chosen choice C or choice D or choice E or one of those other choices seem to be written in a clearer fashion? Okay. Okay, let me ask another different question. Why does the GMAT have sentence correction on there? Why do you think sentence correction as a subsection makes sense? Okay, to check logic, it's more direct. Why else do you think sentence correction makes sense on as to be a part of verbal section of the GMAT? Remove ambiguity to check rational thinking to so that you can comprehend. That's good. Those are really good answers. Okay. To test grammar and logic. So let's kind of see that part. Just remember these answers that you're saying and then correlate these answers to how you've approached GMAT sentence correction. And then I'm going to ask yourself again, did you really apply yourself in this context when it comes to how you approach sentence correction questions? Okay. For those of you who really say GMAT sentence correction is to check your clarity of grammar concepts, no, it's not. It's not the GMAT's not a test for science teachers or for English teachers. It's a test for leaders. It's a test for managers. Managers need to have good spoken skills, good communication skills, and not perfect grammar. So if you think GMAT sentence correction is a test of grammar, go elsewhere. Maybe go take a teacher's test. No, it isn't. It's a test of logic and meaning. And the reason what I'm telling you is a lot of grammarians who take GMAT sentence correction would score less than 50th percentile just because they purely focus on grammar. I can't even tell you how many grammar teachers I've fired. So a lot of people look at this and really say, okay, I'm going to use splits while solving sentence correction questions. How many of you use splits and or try to find splits in this? Okay, don't do that. No idea of splits. I love that answer. I'll tell you why. When it comes to GMAT sentence correction, the very idea of splits means that you're kind of doing pattern recognition. And by the way, we don't need humans for pattern recognition anymore. Computers can do a much better job of pattern recognition. And splits in this case, you can't use. I mean, you'd say, hey, there's but everywhere, barring this answer choice T. And then you have two answer choices that have while, then two answer choices that start with the, and one that starts with that. So when you think about this, and you can really say, hey, there are about 10 plus various options that I can use with. And for those of you say, I need a noun clause there. No, let's kind of look at what you need in a very holistic way. Okay. Because starting with that notion of what you need with regards to grammar is not the right way to understand sentence correction. Grammar comes at a later stage in solving questions. Let's talk about this. And this is coming from a company that said meaning in 2010 as a center to answering GMAT sentence correction question. If you go on GMAT Club, in 2012, there's an article written by Payal Tandon, who's my co-founder. She talks about 5 strategies that GMAT uses to change meaning. 2012. People started talking about meaning 6 years later, by the way. Okay. So let's talk about this and say, how do you approach a question such as this one? And let's look at this question. The church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day. Okay. And you've read this. What I want you to urge to do this is to read this sentence by pausing it at different points. Read the sentence by strategically pausing at appropriate points, and I want you to understand what is it that the author wants to communicate. Okay. So let's kind of do that and do it exactly over here. The church coined the date 14th February as Valentine's Day. Okay. I'm going to pause over here. Why did the church coin this? With an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. Okay. And that part is claimed by a few experts. Now, can you notice the indentation that I'm doing? Notice how I'm adding bullets to all of this, where I'm indenting this to refer to this part of the sentence. This is what we call as referring which part belongs to this. When you're reading that sentence to get the meaning, you've got to do that. This is called a strategic pausing technique. Okay, but it is celebrated on this date to honor. To is a purpose word over here. The purpose of this is to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial is the more prevalent belief. When you think about this and you really say, hey, let's not worry about whether this is grammatically correct or not. Let's understand what is it that the author is trying to communicate. What you see is there are two claims about the celebration of February 14th as Valentine's Day in this. The claim one is that the church designated it with a specific motive. Claim two is that it's to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. And then claim one is by a few experts, and claim two is the more prevalent belief according to what the author says. So there are three aspects of meaning that the author wants to communicate from this particular sentence. How many of you got all of these three aspects while solving this question? How many of you understood these three aspects? How many of you got this? Okay. For those of you who are saying yes, I'm going to put in another yes no question. For those of you who say yes, I got all of these three aspects, each of these three aspects, how many of you chose choice C? Don't say yes. Say yes if you chose choice C despite getting these three aspects. If you chose choice C despite getting these three aspects. Because that's a self-evaluation that you're doing, and you're doing that wrong, and I'm going to demonstrate that. So let's kind of look at this. So essentially in this, there are two claims that the church makes. The church designates, claim one is that Valentine's Day was designated with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration. The claim two is to honor the anniversary. And then you can see claim one is by a few experts, claim two is the more prevalent belief. Okay, now let's kind of go forward. If you were able to understand all three aspects, you understand the meaning well enough. If you don't, and if you weren't able to understand all three aspects, you need to build that skill set of strategically pausing to understand the meaning of this sentence. Okay, so let's analyze the errors in these sentences. And in the first choice, so this is choice. So we're now going to go through choice A, B, and C. So the church coined. So you can see subject. and verb over here. Uh, the date February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive is claimed. Does is claimed have a subject? Does is claimed have the subject here? No, that's the first error here. But it is celebrated on this date to honor the burial of Valentine's. To honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial is the more prevalent belief. Does this is have a subject? No. Okay. These two verbs don't have subjects. Over here, you have clearly defined subject verb pairs. That's the problem with choice A. No, that's not the entire subject. It is celebrated as a subject verb. It is celebrated on this date is the most prevalent belief. No, that part is its celebration is the most prevalent belief. Then its celebration would be the subject, but it is celebrated can't be the subject. Again, that's one of those things that you need to really focus on. Arnav, does that help? All right, so let's kind of talk about this. Think about the clarity when you split a sentence. Think about the clarity when you split the sentence into such aspects that you have with regards to the errors that the sentence has. Okay. Now we know the meaning analysis. We know choice A is wrong. Let's now take this and look at all the other answer choices. Okay. Choice B. Very few of you marked choice B. On the top, you still have choice A. Choice B will be there at the bottom. Choice B says, while with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. What's wrong with choice B? What's wrong with choice B? While with an ulterior motives to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. No, it's not word here. What happens with choice B? Let's see, can someone gets to it? Yes, who said that? Look at that precision. LJ, that's great. LJ says experts did not have the ulterior motives. While with an ulterior motive, a few experts do claim. This ulterior motive now refers to the experts. Is that what the author wanted to communicate? Is that what the author wanted to communicate? No. Okay. Yes. And again, the motive that the church had is gone over here, which is the second piece over here, which kind of comes from the first piece. So, which is why choice B is wrong. It's not because it's word here, it just changes the meaning. Let's look at choice C. Okay. Think of it from a meaning standpoint. What's wrong with choice C? What's wrong with choice C? Half of you chose choice C. There, yes, who said that? Let's look at this. Sid said that. Now remember, in the original meaning, claim 1 was by a few experts. Claim 2 was by a second group of experts. Okay. So there were two different groups that were there in the original meaning. That's what the author wanted to communicate. Choice C says, while a few experts claim that the church coined the date blah 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 with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of this. There, who does there refer to over here? Who does there refer to? The same experts. Is that what the author intended to? Is that what the author intends to communicate? No, it's not the same set of experts. These were two different groups of experts in choice A. Okay. The use of while is not grammatically wrong. Okay. Let me just bring another sentence over here, and which is from a grammar standpoint. If I do this, while the stockbroker has recommended uh, a buy, his true recommendation or if I do another one, is there anything wrong in sentence 2 over here from a grammar standpoint? No, there's nothing wrong in, yeah, there's nothing wrong in parallelism. While the stockbroker, that's true. Sorry, the broker needs to be there. Yes. I mean, it communicates the meaning perfectly over here. What I'm trying to say is when you look at the while piece over here and you say there is no contrast, there is there. While they claim this, their belief is this. While, if you were to really say this, can you replace while with although and it will fit perfectly? Over here, although a few experts claim. No, the contrast is there. Why can't you? You can replace it with although a few experts claim, their more prevalent belief is this. There is a contrast. There's a contrast. In my claim, while this guy is recommending Google, he is going to invest money in Microsoft. There is a contrast. Even in my example, in this example as well, there is a contrast. If you're recommending Google and you're going to invest money in Microsoft, isn't that a contradiction or a contrast? Who says there is no contrast? I mean, the meaning of contrast, guys. While you think you should study PowerPoint, while the company thinks you should be trained in PowerPoint, they use Google presentations in the organizations. There is a contrast there. Again, look at this. And when I say those 200 concepts, this contrast piece is a concept. It's not a grammar rule. It's a contrast. It's a concept that's coming in. That's the part of those 200 concepts that's coming in over here. Okay. This choice, 50% of you chose that. It illogically suggests that the same set of experts share the two stated claims. You should have seen that if you truly understood that meaning piece. Okay. And this is the level of precision you need to get to if you want to get to that 90th percentile. Let's look at choice D now. The church coined the term February 14th as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of, as claimed by few experts. But its celebration on this date is to honor the Valentine's death or burial, the more prevalent belief. Grammatically, there is nothing wrong in this. What's the meaning error here? What's the meaning error here? The church coined the date. Hold on. No, yeah, it doesn't bring out the contrast. No, there it does actually. Let me just take my word back. The word but is a contrast word. Okay. It's no reference to what? Let's talk about this. In the original sentence, and you have the original sentence over here. In the original sentence, does the author have an opinion in the original sentence? Does the author have an opinion in the original sentence? Can you look at this again? No. Does the author have an opinion in choice D? The church coined the date as claimed by the few experts, but its celebration is. The author has an opinion in choice D. In the original choice, the author simply states a fact that there are these two contrasting claims. Claim one is by this guy, claim two is by this guy. In this, there are two distinct opinions. The author has his own opinion. This choice changes the meaning in a huge way. Okay. If you were to do GMAT RC, if you read this statement, you would take completely different inferences from it. How do we know? Let's talk about this. But its celebration is to honor this, the more prevalent belief. Yeah, what about the more prevalent belief? The author is saying this celebration is to honor the anniversary, and that part is also the more prevalent belief. Let's just go back to my example over here. Let's just bring in. Let's just go over here and take a simple example. I'm going to just put in the second part. I'm going to try and build an example, and which is kind of where what you see is just knowing concepts isn't enough. You have to know them in the context of sentence structures. Okay. I don't know if my spelling of atrocities is correct. If I really just say the parade in Chinatown is to revolt against the atrocities of the past, let's just put a full stop over here. Then what am I saying? Am I not telling you that is what it is? Yes or no? We're going to put the modifier after this, but it's now. Let's just say as remembered by the again, maybe it's not the best construction, but even when I add this to it, the parade in Chinatown is to revolt against the atrocities of the past. This is still my belief, and then as remembered by the older Chinese is I'm adding to it. It's like it's the as remembered is to the revolt, but the fact that the parade in Chinatown is to revolt against the atrocities of the past is still my belief, as the author is saying. Okay, and that's a very important distinction. That no, because there as remembered is the revolt part, but the parade is still this. And again, that's kind of where if you get to the if you mix CR, RC, and SC. You look at what statements mean. When you look at sentence structure, you're going to be able to do this. So its celebration on this date is, when you look at this, is to honor. What this means is the author agrees with that belief, and in the original sentence, the author doesn't agree with this belief. If you want to know how WPS, we have a GMAT sentence correction webinar next week, in which I'm going to be happy to celebrate, to again uh, talk about this. Now let's look at choice E, which is our correct choice. Now I'm going to put in the poll over here. 20% of you chose choice E, 24 of you chose choice E over here. That the church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration is claimed by a few experts. Okay, that the church coined is claimed by a few experts, but the more prevalent belief is it is celebrated on this date to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. So when you think about the two claims, those two claims are covered over here. Okay, claim 1 is by a few experts, claim 2 is the more prevalent belief, is covered over here. And claim 1 is designated by the church designated it with an ulterior motive is done over there, and claim 2 is there as well. So yes, as some of you are saying, that threw you off. Why should it throw you off? Because you think GMAT sentence correction is about elegant construction. No, it isn't. It is about meaning. GMAT sentence correction is about meaning. Who said a sentence starting with that is wrong? Who says? Tell me one grammar rule that says a sentence starting with that is wrong. Yes. That refers to that the church coined is the more prevalent, is claimed by a few experts. And it was the first to get eliminated. Why? If you think about it, think about the action, and I'm going to leave this with you. It's not, just think about this and really say, okay, although I got this question right, the presence of that will make in between will make it better. Yes, it might, but it's about right and wrong. And what you really saw with every other answer choice was there was a solid reason to reject it. Just because you don't like that construction is not a solid reason, especially when the precision is there. Okay. Now, for those of you who are asking, what does that refer to? Doesn't that tell you that you need to understand sentence structures? And again, I'm not going to go into this because this is not an SC session. It's a GMAT strategy session. We have an SC session next week. Come there. We'll explain what that does. But it is an indication. It's a data point that tells you you don't split the sentence. You don't focus on the meaning, right? Yes, if it's not super common, doesn't make it wrong. This was a 700 level question. Only 20% of you got this right. But the thing which is there is, if you want to get to that 90th percentile, you have to solve such questions correctly. And again, which is where most of you, I mean, there was no grammar concept other than subject verb that was tested over here. But because you weren't familiar with the sentence structures, you really couldn't really, you made a mistake. One of the other things you really need to do is to say, after you make a mistake, you need to do what we call as a strategic review. And what is a strategic review? Ask yourself, did I understand all aspects of the meaning presented by the original sentence? By the way, 20% of you got it right. You have to figure out why those 20% got it right. You have to ask yourself, why did you reject the correct choice? Was it because you misunderstood some grammatical rule? Was it because you missed an aspect of the meaning? And so on and so forth. And the third question is, why did you select an incorrect choice? Was it again similarly? Was it because there was a meaning error that you could not spot? In choice C, the fact that both the set of experts was same is a huge meaning error. People who chose choice C could not spot that. Okay. Some of you said, hey, because that has to always be wrong. It's very uh, you can't start a sentence with that. You misunderstood that grammatical rule. That's why you rejected choice E and probably chose choice C. Or it could also be because you applied some grammatical rule incorrectly. Okay. I'm just going to really do a strategic review of this briefly over here, and let's kind of look at this. If you chose choice A, very few of you did, you basically failed to observe that the subjects were missing for certain verbs. If you chose choice B, you failed to observe the meaning distortion. And same thing with regards to uh, choice C as well. Now, the kind of meaning distortions in choice B and choice C, they were very different. Okay. Similarly, in choice D, you fail to observe the fact that the author is presenting as an opinion in choice D, whereas in choice A, the author presented no opinion. Again, was there any grammar in all of this here? Was there any grammar here? When you look at the three different kinds of meaning distortion, no. It's all about sentence structures. And when you multiply the sentence structures with the concepts, that's when you lead to those 200 concepts. All right, so let's kind of move forward. I want to just go towards the end of this webinar. Choice A has grammar error. Yes, that is correct. Okay. Some of you asked, how do you give that feedback over here? And so let's kind of talk about that feedback of a student who did well in SC. There's a guy who scored 730. His quant and verbal scores are what you can see over here. Choice E was the correct answer. Now, here is the subject verb module in the e-GMAT course. This is just the subject verb module. And you see 9 entities in this module. Now, what you see with every entity is feedback. Tejas says, as much as I've seen the longer underlined sentences will have issues with meaning than with grammar. Tejas, come to the next session. We'll show you small underlined sentences that have meaning with issues with meaning. So just come over to the next session. Now, you see feedback that's personalized. You also see as concepts get more difficult, people tend to spend more time. This time is something that we track for you, which you spend. Okay. Assessment at every level. There are at least 10 items in each of these files that we assess you on. Sometimes before you start a file, sometimes after you finish a file, sometimes both. Okay. Words that change numbers. So you can see the level of depth and the increasing set of sentence structures. Then you're evaluated just on your conceptual knowledge. Then we bring in more sentence structures over here. And we evaluate you on sentence structures as well. Now, the beauty of this is when you do something like this, you see this, he scored low in a file, he scored 60% over here. He spent 46 minutes reviewing that, which is why he was able to get to that 100% score on the next slide. And you're going to really see why that was the case. Similarly, in verb sequencing, again, you can see there's a lot of evaluation over here. You can see the amount of time he spent reviewing solutions over here. Again, one of the things that you see is in practice quiz, he did not score as well, but in the OG quiz, which was the set of official questions that just test verbs, he was able to get 100%. Let's see why that was the case. This is the practice quiz in which he didn't do well. You can see where he did not do well. You can see the difficulty level. You can see the 1:3 ratio between an easy and a hard question. Even when you're learning, we give you this data point over here. Also, what you can see is he bookmarked these questions, he reviewed these questions. Because he corrected those mistakes right then and there, he was able to get 100% accuracy on this. And that's the power of getting the right kind of feedback at the right time. You can correct yourself while learning. You don't have to spend time till the end. Okay. This guy took 3 attempts. He said, my concepts weren't bad in attempt 1 and 2, but I lack the knowledge to apply the same. If you just know the concepts, you can get down to 2 choices. But after that, it's the application and the meaning-based application that makes the difference. So let's kind of look at how. Here's another guy who scored 760, and he did the same thing. By the way, there are actually, I'm going to just skip this part over here. And just go to summarizing this because we are already ahead of this. But essentially the point over here is when you have the right methods and you get the right kind of feedback, you correct yourself. When you correct yourself, you as you study more, you enjoy that studying. On the other hand, if you don't get feedback, if you don't take feedback into account, studying studying actually becomes a chore. And that's something when that's when you start to really say, hey, I've studied sentence correction enough, I want to move on to another subsection. So just to summarize this, make sure you aim for that high GMAT score. Make sure you focus on building ability to get there. Build a personalized study plan. Make sure you know how much time you're going to spend in each subsection. Understand the stages of learning that are there and understand where you need to start each subsection from. And even when you have this, make sure you have the right attitude to learn. Make sure you apply the right methods to learn. Okay. Without feedback, you're going to find that improving beyond a point starts to become very, very difficult. You get stuck at that 60th to 70th percentile ability. If you want to get to that 90th percentile, don't solve a lot of questions. Review questions. Review your mistakes. Spend 10-15 minutes reviewing that. Attribute causality and then don't make that mistake again. Okay. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today, and write to me if you need help defining your study plan. What the feedback points are? Sure. The feedback points, we just talked about that, right? In those slides. Hold on. Each of these over here is a feedback point we need. Or Amir, each of these is a feedback point over here. In the entire SC module, in the learning part, not the assessments part, you get 100 feedback 100 times. You see these scores? That's feedback. Okay. So with that, I want to end the poll. End the webinar. Sorry, it's been a long webinar. Let me share the session files with you. You can download it. For those of you who have doubts on SC questions, you can definitely do look at the question again, look at the explanation. I also want to share the webinar links for the upcoming webinars that we have. We have this quant workshop, and we have an SC webinar overall, which is next week. Okay. Now, can you tell me Informative is one thing, and thank you for the feedback. I truly appreciate that. But what are the 2 or 3 points that you took from this webinar? What are the few points that you actually got from it? Okay, ability. Yeah, the webinar is done. Yes. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those. But the webinar is done. Buildability and strategic review errors. Okay, that's good. Okay, don't blindly do practice. That's good. You need to look into 200 concepts. And again, just make sure you have that precision study plan, because that is something which is really important to get. It's a great starting point. And yeah, I can see that most of you booked the slots. So I don't see a whole lot of slots open over here. Islam says I got 380 in my last exam. Can I get to 700? Can you? Yes. How long? But you would need to spend about 400 hours to get there. Is what I would say. Um, mm, and, and 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 yeah. So you need about 400 hours to get there. And you can watch some of the videos where you can really see how people have gotten to those scores. Tejas says, do you plan to publish any books? No, Tejas, we don't. We have absolutely no plans to publish a book. We publish a lot of research that you can really see, uh, that you can read over here, and uh, but we don't plan to publish books, because books are static. I mean, books don't give you feedback. Books don't change dynamically based uh, on 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 how you're performing. So, I mean, I don't see the purpose of frankly having a book in today's world. Odo says if you have 2 full weeks to prepare after having all the concept work done, what's the best approach within these 2 weeks? Odo, I don't know. I'll have to really, if I were you, I would take a Sigma X mock first so that I know your abilities, and then from there. So just go to egmat.com/sigmax and take a Sigma X mock there. Uh, so this is what I would do. Um, okay. All right. Unable to register, send me the link. Yes, let me just give you the link over here itself so that you can register for the webinar. Here is the link for the SC webinar. Will we make this webinar available for viewing? Yes, it will be. And then if you've joined using, let me actually share the PDF, a link for PDF as well for those of you who have an unsupported client to download this. Just give me 1 second. Let's see. I don't think I have a a direct link. Yeah, I don't believe it. So I'll send the PDF and the email. So don't worry about this. Do we use GMAT questions as a part of the course preparation? No, Otto. We create our own questions. You can't use GMAT questions. They're licensed. Only Wiley has a license to them. Sorry about that. So no, we create all of our own questions. We support all GMAT questions. So if you have a doubt, we'll give you a comprehensive solution. We have comprehensive solutions to most official questions, but every question that you see in the e-GMAT portal is an e-GMAT question. That way, we indemnify you. No one can sue you as an individual to really say, hey, you started using certain questions, but you didn't pay for them. Why? Because if you study from a test prep company, you and it uses official questions, and if it hasn't licensed those questions, then you could get into trouble. So all right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in tomorrow's session as well as in the session next weekend. Good luck and have a good day.